An impressive time, a championship record for Nate Reich, and Nate Reich is the world champion for the first time in his first global championship.
I feel like in anyone's story, starting from the beginning always means so much, and finding where you really came from. For me, born in Fresno, California, really growing up around as many professional athletes as you can really imagine, with all of my parents and step-parents all being professional athletes, and growing up, that's what I wanted. Nothing more than to follow in their footsteps, and selfishly hopefully do it a little bit better than they did. And I know they wanted that for me and for my siblings, but I always wanted to kind of go in my own direction, like most kids do. Kind of wanted to have my own flip to it, or my own twist, and I definitely didn't think that it would be done for me. In 2005, I was 10 years old, playing golf with a couple of my friends. We were trying to kill time for the day, and I'm sure we were driving our parents crazy like any 10-year-old does. And on the 7th hole, my older group of gentlemen asked to play through. They asked, "Hey, can you hit your balls first, and then we'll play through. Why don't you go stand under the tree?" At the time, it was about 110 degrees out in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I was living. And we were under the tree, about 150 yards left of the fairway, and he shanked the ball. And I remember hearing him make contact with the ball. It was a SQ Nike driver, which kind of sounded like a tin trash can. And next thing I knew, I had this tingly sensation run through my body, and right away my right arm bolted down, and soon to find out that I was slowly becoming paralyzed. And I remember calling my mom and asking her to come and pick me up from the golf course, and I think she thought I was being a bit dramatic, because getting hit in the head with the golf ball doesn't happen very often. And I remember being pretty panicked myself and just wanting to go get checked out. And my mom wasn't very nervous. When she got to the golf course, I could squeeze my hand, but like I said, the right side of my body was becoming paralyzed. And she dropped my friends off first, because the hospital isn't a very warming place for kids. And so closer and closer as we got to the hospital, I become fully paralyzed on the right side of my body, and could see some panic in my mom's eyes. And when I got back to the hospital, to my room, I had my first seizure, and that was kind of my oh crap moment. Before that, I thought maybe I would just have to take a couple of days down and I would be better. But then to find out that I had internal bleeding, the bleeding had no signs of stopping. And they kept throwing around this word paralyzed, and I think luckily at that time I did not know what that word meant, and it sounded like just a medical term that adults talked about. And I was just trying to get my way back on that baseball field as quickly as I could. And that was really tough. And up until then, I didn't really have that many tough moments. Grew up in a very athletic family, had everything that I needed, and this is really the first time I had to fight, quote unquote, for my life. After my family and I heard what the doctor told to me, I definitely had my mind made up pretty quick that I wanted to really give this thing a go and find out how good I could be. And I knew it was really important that I created, the team around me, my family around me. And I'm definitely, parents ask a lot of questions, because I feel like when you get injured like that, there's two ways to really take it. You can either ease the kid back into things, or really, really push them. And I stuttered really, really bad from my brain injury. I remember just people making fun of me a lot growing up, and I wouldn't say it was bullying. It was just for me, it was just really hard to talk normally, and I would stutter really bad. And my mom would, sometimes give me the phone and ask me to, make a reservation for a restaurant that we were going to later. And those are one of the little things that she would do to really push me. Or sometimes she would tell me I was doing a time trial on Thursday, but really pull me to the track on Wednesday, and made sure that no matter what was going to come my way, that my mindset was ready to race and run. And I was super lucky. My stepdad, Ben, and my mom played such different roles. My mom was more the physical and pushing me and trying to give me that confidence, because I definitely lacked that confidence a lot, because I had a learning disability. And definitely my mom fought for me a lot to get into normal classroom setting. But I felt like she was the one that was standing up for me, and I didn't really know how to do that yet at that time. And my stepdad was more the mental aspect, more the tactical aspect, where We would lift together. We would talk about how I want to approach things, how if I want to be the best, I also need to train. And you get to a point at races where you've done all the training, but your legs feel like crap. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how your legs feel. When it comes to that point, you know that you've done the training, and so you just need to go out there and execute. And so they played such a great yin and yang, and that was so important to me. And definitely, I would have not had the success if it was just one of them. And sometimes my mom would get tired of trying to pump me up, so then my stepdad Ben would come in and fill in that gap, and vice versa. And I felt so lucky. And when I got into the Paralympics, and the first year in 2018, there was no World Championships, but I really wanted to be as successful as I can. And so I thought to myself, why don't I build a team similar to the team that I built around me and my family after recovering from being paralyzed. And so I moved up to Victoria, British Columbia, and had this amazing team, from physiologists to sports psychologists to a coach, assistant coach, training partners. Literally every box was ticked. And so it almost was like I was getting to do it all over again. I was getting to do this thing that I loved, even though that I thought that dream could have been gone. And it was so amazing, getting a chance to see everything come together in 2021. But of course, you got to qualify for the team first. And the way it works in the Paralympic Games is each country gets a certain amount of allotted slots from the previous World Championships. And then each country selects their team. There are standards, but a lot of times, a lot of the Paralympic athletes run faster than the standard, but they only have that certain allotted spots. And I was currently #1 in the world at the time, but you can't rest on your laurels. I definitely wasn't gonna celebrate until I saw my name on that sheet. And I remember calling my mom and having a conversation with her, and it was a pretty emotional conversation, knowing that I had just made the Paralympic team. And my mom won the Olympic trials in 2000, but just missed making that team. And she had me 5 years earlier, and I think if she didn't have me, she probably would have made that team pretty easily. But instead, she had to make sacrifices. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that was something that really pushed me, knowing that she made so many sacrifices for me, and that we were going to do this together. I definitely wasn't living her dream, I was living mine. But if I didn't want to get up and do a second run during that day, my siblings and my parents were definitely two huge motivators. And during that whole Paralympic buildup, I didn't see my family for 18 months, and anyone who knows me knows how important my family was. But I knew I had to almost lock myself on Vancouver Island and just do almost a training camp for a year. And I knew if I wanted to win, I had to break 350 in the 1500 meters, and no one in my classification had ever done that. And fortunately, in May in Portland, Oregon, I ran 347, and that was equally as exciting as seeing my name on the top of that sheet of people who made Team Canada. And yeah, it was so amazing. And when you're doing that final prep, we were in Gifu for 2 weeks leading up to Tokyo, and you think everything's going to go super smooth sailing. And our pre-camp went really smooth. Did everything I needed to do. Wasn't injured. Had my uncle, who's my main therapist, who has always kept me healthy, and I felt so fortunate. But the day of the race, I had a little bit of adversity. My right leg, works not as good as my left, obviously, and but it was really not working that day. I didn't know if I was so nervous that my body just didn't feel right, or if my neuromuscular system just wasn't woken up. And I remember kind of having this conflict in my head, to be like, do I tell Heather, my coach, or I know it would kind of freak both of us out. Maybe it's best that I'm only freaked out, or but if I don't tell her and then she could have done something about it, will I be kicking myself for that? And so I remember going over to her and kind of pulling her where no one else was, being like, hey, my leg is not working right now. What do we need to do? And we decided, let's do some like 30-meter sprints all out and try to wake up that nervous system. And then after kind of my warm up, it kind of went to the back of my mind, because then we had to go sit in a tent, a call tent, for about an hour before the race. But it still wasn't feeling that great. And then all of a sudden when I got on the line, it started to, my last stride felt great. And, you know, finally I was like, all right, let's do this thing. And let's, you know, at the end of the day, you just got to lay it all out there. And as you can imagine, we all have race plans going into the games, but they don't always work out the way you think you're going to. I thought that for sure it was going to be a slow race, but it was not a slow race. The first lap was 63, and I thought it was going to be a 66 or 67. And right after 400 meters, I knew to win a gold medal at the Paralympic Games, you had to make a risk. And so after 400 meters, I just decided to go and kind of go for broke, and being like, maybe I can catch them by surprise, thinking that I'm moving really early in the race. And the next thing I knew, I told myself, let's run the same exact pace for the second lap. And then I looked back after 800 meters and there was a huge gap. And so I just tried to maintain as close as I can. And, with 100 meters left, it definitely kind of set in that I was gonna win this thing that I dreamed about for my entire life. I remember crossing the line, or almost crossing the line, and telling myself not to scream, to just get over that line and grab the flag. But right as I crossed the line, I just started screaming yes. And it was, I was telling myself to stop screaming, but there's some pretty funny pictures of me screaming and memes that my friends have made to make fun of me. But it was so amazing, and obviously I would have loved my parents to be there. Fortunately, they weren't. Heather and Carla Nichols were there, and so I went and grabbed the flag from them, and they've been kind of two mother-like figures for me on the track, and so it was really cool to share that moment with them. But honestly, I was really wanting to just get back to my phone and call my mom and talk to my parents. I know they're having a viewing party at our house, and all my cousins and siblings were there, and so it was really cool to hear that. And my mom's not someone who cries very often, and could definitely tell that she had been a little emotional, and like she does, she gave me a hard time and said, why'd you look back, and why'd you wear a speed suit? And so it was kind of that perfect conversation, because it was just so her. And I definitely wanted to celebrate with my family, and I got to get back to Georgia after the games, and my mom picked me up from the airport, and usually she doesn't pick me up from the airport. Usually I just Uber, and I walked in our front door, and my whole family was sitting in there surprising me, and we just had a cookout. And that was that moment that I had dreamed about, celebrating with my family and friends. And usually you get it at the games, but I got it in my own home. And it was really cool. My cousins asking to see the medal, and that's definitely, when anyone asks me like, what's the one moment that you like rethink about, or lives rent free in your head, and it's definitely that moment. And that was something I will never forget.